The following video will include discussions of physical and sexual abuse, rape, suicide, and general sexual themes. It will also include spoilers for Persona 5. The Persona series is experiencing a lot of success right now. It's been on the incline for quite a while, and with the release and subsequent mass praise for Persona 5, it broke into the mainstream. Suddenly, a semi-niche anime life dating sim monster taming, monster slaying JRPG was known by pretty much everyone in fan communities. For all the hype, Persona 5 does have its flaws, and that's no secret. Critique is well-tread ground here. Part of appreciating a game through analysis is being able to recognize its shortcomings alongside its virtues. Nothing is perfect, and not being so surely isn't a condemnation or death sentence. But there is one criticism I want to elaborate on today. I've seen it brought up countless times and fiercely debated just as often. With this issue, I think there's a disconnect concerning the problems critics try to address and what detractors think they're saying. So I want to spell out some of the sentiments when it comes to Ann Takamaki. Of course, while I'm drawing from the greater community, this will heavily lean towards my own thoughts and feelings. Despite that, I am going to do my best to look at things objectively. I'm not going to be slinging criticisms just because I don't like something, but instead because of inconsistent writing or failures to follow through on core themes and ideas. So what's all the noise over Ann about? It's a bit difficult to answer that without oversimplifying and losing important details, but it does come down to how her character is portrayed and how wildly that fluctuates through different narrative points in the game. So we need to start with her most important place in the overall story, as a center point in the Kamoshida conflict and her ensuing awakening. This arc in particular has some of the most intense subject matter within the series. Persona 5 deals in some very mature topics, and the first palace is a trial by fire. By doing this, it lays out the greater themes of the entry. Current society is one where those in power are corrupt and freely abuse those weaker than them, and this disproportionately affects the youth population. The conflict with Kamoshida demonstrates this clearly. It is a case of physical and sexual harassment and abuse, and those suffering can't break out because of the power dynamics and systems at play. When we first meet Ann, she's been pushed into a corner. Kamoshida has been harassing her for months, and he's using her best friend Shiho as leverage. When she refuses to sleep with him, it's heavily implied that Kamoshida rapes Shiho in Ann's place, causing the girl to attempt suicide. This is about as fucked up as it gets. It's visceral, horrific, and all too real. This situation exactly may not play out in our world, but the power dynamics, motives, and traumas mirror actual things people go through. Persona 5 makes it clear it's not going to pull its punches, and that momentum makes Ann's awakening a very powerful moment. Her rebellion is one that rejects people forcing their desires on her and demanding she submit to them. Instead, she decides to flip the script. The form this takes, the leather, cat mask, and whip, it's very obvious that her Phantom Thief outfit is that of a dominatrix. This theme is carried over in her persona as well. Carmen has two male-coded figures on leashes. She pays them little mind, and she's even stepping on one. Ann breaks out of the system by embracing her sexuality in the sense that she is asserting herself and finding power in it. It's blatant that she does this not by taking on a submissive role, but by acting out one of domination. Ann is the one who will be in control. She will take what she wants, deny what she doesn't, and do it all on her own terms. While there are moments in the game that the camera does ogle Ann in a way that undercuts the themes of her character, the shots here are not the problem. She's finally taking control of the situation and is asserting her dominance. A dominatrix is inherently tied to sexuality, and in this moment, she's owning her body and power. So even if I personally find these jiggle physics a bit gratuitous, the shot makes sense thematically. When the fight with Kamoshida ends, Joker, Morgana, and Ryuji give Ann the choice of how to deal with Kamoshida. They take a step back and allow her to say her piece and decide the fate of her abuser. Ryuji, despite also being a victim of Kamoshida's crimes, willingly lets her lead here. This is more than facing off with a single perpetuator of violence and harassment. As stated before, Kamoshida is emblematic of so much. In Ann's case, it's a world that will continuously make assumptions about her and feel entitled to her because of the way she looks. He is a representation of all the people who will never see her as a fellow human, but as an object and a piece of meat. Taking him down will not end what she and other women face, and it won't alleviate their traumas. But it will at least take one piece of shit out of the equation, send a message, and bring light to and end the abuses going on at Shujin. And as powerful as these moments inside the First Palace are, they're sadly the best and most coherent scenes of Ann will ever get. A lot has been said about how all the characters, Ann and Ryuji foremost, lack development after the palaces they're attached to. But Ann in particular quickly begins being portrayed in a way that's so antithetical to what her introduction arc was saying that the game is basically shooting itself in the foot. The big problem lies in the way Ann is sexualized following the Kamoshida arc. Ah yes, here we are at the hot button issue. I'm absolutely chomping at the bit for the angry comments to roll in, accusing me of censorship and demanding my blood for critiquing the precious anime titty. Seriously though, stick with me and let me explain why people are upset about this. It's not the fan service. It's the night and day difference between the setup and exploration of her character in the first arc, and her reduction to hot anime girl to sell merch following it. Ann never gets to truly embody the archetype of a femme fatale or dominatrix after Kamoshida's palace ends. In her social link, we see her talk about strengthening her heart and gush about the villainesses she admired in her childhood, but the focus is on Shiho and Mika, not Ann coming to embrace the power she can have over other people because of her appearance. She never gets to carry herself with complete confidence or assert herself without hesitation, bar a single scene in the end in which show not tell is thrown completely out the window. A section of the game that shows this best immediately follows the Kamoshida arc. After Yusuke approaches her and the gang decides they need to get information out of him, the subject of Ann modeling nude gets quite a bit of attention. This bit of the game is greatly mismanaged at best, and downright thematically broken and disgusting at worst. A joke about nude modeling isn't terrible on its own, but the way the interactions go and within the context of the rest of the game, this is a train wreck. Any empathy the boys previously had for Ann's trauma vanishes. Not only do they force her into a situation in which she is extremely uncomfortable, but they seem to take some glee in it. Suddenly predatory behavior men exhibit towards Ann is a joke, just because it suits their interests. Not only is it disappointing to see Ryuji and Joker act this way, but it contradicts their earlier actions. And please, keep in mind this is right after the Mariana's Trench deep fuckedness of the Kamoshida situation. While we don't see anything as extreme in the rest of the game, this sets up a running pattern. Ann is suddenly the go-to for sexual humor, and she tends to be the butt of the joke. She never gets to be the one in control of these situations, and she never gets to flip the script on anyone. She's a dominatrix only in costume, decked out to titillate the audience, but never allowed to show enough power as to scare away the standard male fans. She's stripped of her power and her ability to assert herself so that she can be sold as a sex object to the player. It's disappointing, and it shatters the themes that the character was introduced with. Just donning the appearance of a femme fatale is not enough. The game needs to show us this in her actions, relationships, and how she's framed. Let me illustrate this by calling in the shiny example of a near, if not perfect, dominatrix character. Bayonetta. The Bayonetta series is one of the naughtiest franchises out there. Bayo can't go a single cutscene or fight without flaunting what the good Lord of Hell gave her. And it works, and always stays thematically cohesive, because she's always the one in control and is choosing to be sexualized. She quite literally dominates her opponents. I mean, her specials are literally called torture attacks. The camera ogles Bayo too, but she plays into it and enjoys it. That's the big difference here. Bayonetta doesn't show up, whip a few angels, then proceed to be demure and embarrassed by her own body for the rest of the game. Ann is never allowed to grow into anything close to this role. Her social link mentions her admiration for villainesses, and it has a bit of hazy subtext about asserting herself, but it ultimately ends up floundering about in her modeling career without even drawing the obvious connections to using her body as a source of power. And don't even get me started about this scene in her romance route. That is not the body language of a dominant woman. That's not even a comfortable woman. Please don't force physical contact on women, y'all. At the end of the day, it's a real shame that Ann's character ends up so confused, and I do believe that it comes down to her marketability as the standard attractive female character. There's an amount of risk that comes with making direct parallels to BDSM culture, especially dominatrixes. It's something that's still a bit taboo, and a major chunk of the audience might feel threatened or emasculated by the idea of femdom in particular. But that doesn't mean it shouldn't happen and can't be successful and loved. Again, look at our Lord and Savior Bayonetta. Ann's portrayal becomes uncomfortable not because she's sexualized, but because the player is asked to sexualize her when she's unwilling and uncomfortable. She's disempowered in these situations, and we're asked to take pleasure in it. When it comes down to it, we become the next Kamoshida. We're asked by the game to be creepy and predatory, to disregard her feelings and character to prioritize our own desires. The justice and ideals we were supposed to be fighting for at the start of the game are disregarded for cheap thrills. And if the basis of the story's entire theme is so easily broken, how are we supposed to take the rest seriously? Ann's portrayal isn't the only thing that could stand some adjustment in Persona 5. But for a series so focused on socializing and bonds, there's no better place to start than the characters. To invest in a story about breaking free of and correcting systems of oppression, we need to be able to see ourselves as true allies to these ideals. And part of that means being there for our friends and respecting their autonomy and feelings, rather than perpetuating the abuse they've already lived through. I hope this has been able to give more people a bit of a better perspective regarding this whole debate. Personally, I relate a lot to characters like Ann, and I love the concept of another dominatrix-themed character. But let me know what you thought about the whole thing. I'd love to get a discussion going, and I will try and be active in the comments and reply to people so long as I'm seeing good faith arguments or agreements or whatever. If that's not your thing and you just want to see more content, check out our channel, the Digital Dream Club, or say hi on Twitter at DigiDreamClub. I hope you all have a wonderful day.